Maryland football will upset USC this season.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I think that this year, the Terps are going to upset the USC Trojans. I think it's the most likely upset on our schedule. I think it's our best opportunity in probably a while to take down a top 25 team, to take down a team that's probably going to be in the upper echelon of the Big Ten, and to really get a big-time upset under Coach Loxley. Over these last couple of years with Taulia Tagovailoa, he's been obviously awesome for the Maryland program. He's done some special things. He's the all-time Big Ten passing leader. He has all these Maryland records. Basically, every Maryland football passing record that you can think of, Taulia probably has. But there was always one thing that was missing for me with Taulia Tagovailoa, and I think that a lot of the times in the big games, he came up small. He couldn't come through. And when we played Ohio State last year, I felt like our defense had a really good first half. I thought we should have been up in the first half, but Taulia couldn't stop turning over the ball. This year against Michigan, he didn't have a bad game against Michigan at all, but so close to upsetting, so close to having a real shot to beat the best team in the country last year in Michigan Wolverines, who won the national championship. And we always would just come up small. Against Penn State, we get absolutely smacked, and the offense doesn't look right, and it doesn't look the same as it's been. But I think that this year, the USC Trojans are a team that we potentially could finally really upset. Like I said, we've been close. We've been close to Ohio State before. We were really close to Michigan last year. We've had close games against some really top-end teams. But I want Maryland to pull through. And I think USC is the perfect team that this year we can upset. They're in the second half of the season. It's the seventh game of the season, so it's not a game that's super early on. And this is me kind of just projecting out how things will look. But when I think about USC, I think there's a couple of reasons why I think we have the best shot at beating them. In terms of teams that would be considered an upset if we beat them, you could look through our schedule this year, and there's a couple teams that if you beat them, I think it's considered an upset. Of course, USC, and then Oregon as well. Of course, Oregon's ranked number 3 in the country. They're going to be a top 5 team probably all year. And then Penn State as well, ranked 8th in the country, our last game of the year. Iowa's interesting because right now, preseason, they're ranked 25th. But I don't know by the time we get there if Iowa's still going to be in the top 25. I could honestly say the same thing about USC, but how I'm projecting things to go, I do think that USC, if they're a top-rated team still, if they're a top 20, top 25 team in the country still, I think we will upset the USC Trojans. And let me get into the actual reasons why. Number one, new quarterback. It all starts with a guy that if a team has a new quarterback, your chances of beating them, your chances of upsetting them, I think a lot of the times in this type of situation, when they're replacing the best quarterback in college football over the last couple of years and a Heisman winner and the number 1 pick with Caleb Williams, when they're replacing a guy like that, then with a new quarterback who's definitely not as explosive, that's definitely not the same type of player as Caleb Williams, I think that you have a really good shot, a better shot than you would have had before at potentially beating them. Like if we played USC, let's say last year, yeah, I think that we could have been in maybe a shootout, but at the end of the day, I don't know if our defense would have been able to stop Caleb Williams. But Miller Moss is now the quarterback at USC, and I honestly have a pretty good feeling that we can stop Miller Moss. Like, we can get stops against him. Am I saying that the Terps are going to completely stop a Lincoln Riley-led offense? No, I'm not saying that, but I do think that we have a lot better of a chance to get stops against Miller Moss than when I'm looking at the rest of the teams that we play that the Terps could potentially be considered an upset. Like I said, Oregon, they have Dylan Gabriel. He's one of the favorites for the Heisman. Penn State, Drew Aller has looked really good. Miller Moss, a new starting quarterback, and that's a big reason why I think that the Terps have a chance to beat the Trojans, is because when anytime you have a new starting quarterback, there's a ton of question marks. And Miller Moss wasn't one of these top-rated guys. He's been in the USC system for a little bit now, so it's not like he's been a guy that was like, oh, like he was expected to be the starter. A lot of people thought that Malachi Moore was actually going to be the starter. He was still a pretty heavily recruited kid, a 4-star rated kid out of high school, but a lot of people thought the Malachi kid was going to be a starter, but Malachi Nelson, but he ended up transferring to Boise State. But so Miller Moss gets the job at USC, a new starting quarterback. That's a really good start to upsetting a team, and I think that's probably starting with the biggest reason why I think the Terps are going to be able to upset USC this year. My next reason is their defense. Their defense has never been good over the last couple of seasons. Lincoln Riley, he focuses on the offense side of the ball, and their defensive staff, and it seems like it's a new one every single year, but they never can figure it out on that side of the ball, I feel like. And maybe it's better this year. I've heard reports that it's supposed to be better, but I feel like they've been saying this every single year, that the defense is supposed to be better. So even though our offense at the time might not be super explosive, might not be a top unit in the Big Ten, we might not have a top quarterback, I don't know exactly how things are going to look for us by that time of the season. But one thing that we might be able to count on against USC is scoring points. And so this is why I think that USC could be a really good matchup. Yeah, Miller Moss is a good player, and he's a solid quarterback, but still, Miller Moss is a new starting quarterback. It's not going to be easy, and I think our defense has a good shot to make enough stops to win the game. And then I think that our offense should be able to score, should be able to have some open running lane, some open passes against a USC defense that hasn't been good the last couple of years. And then my third reason why I think we have a really good shot at upsetting USC is we're at home. The other big-time opponents that we play this year are on the road. Oregon, we're at Eugene. Penn State, we're in Happy Valley. And so I'm looking at this USC team, and I'm saying they have to travel across the country all the way from Southern California to beat us. And yeah, will we be favored in that game? No. Are a lot of people going to pick us to win that? No. But I think the fact that we play at home, it always helps. It always gives you a boost. It always is going to play to your side of things when you're at home. It always helps. So we're going to have the Maryland section behind us, and we're going to be at our place. I think we have a really good chance of upsetting that USC Trojan team, and I'm going to go ahead and call it before the season starts. I think we're going to beat USC. Now, by the time we get there, to be completely honest, a lot could change. There's injuries. There's people have lost games. People have won games. There's so many different things. You can have depth problems. There's just so many. You can have quarterback problems. Who knows what can happen by that time of the season? I don't even know if USC will be ranked by that time. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. They have a pretty tough schedule at certain points to start the year. So they could real quick kind of go down because they have some tough games really early on. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, the first part of USC's schedule is actually really hard. So by the time we play them, to be completely honest, it might not be a ranked game. Like, they play LSU in their first game. They play Michigan in their third game. They play Wisconsin in their fourth game. And they play Penn State right before us. Another reason why I think that we can beat USC, which wasn't a reason I actually thought about before this, but playing Penn State before us is really hard. They're going to run the football. They're going to beat you up. I remember there's a stat about, and I know this is the NFL, but I think Penn State could work in a similar way in this type of thing. It was like teams never could win the week after playing the 49ers. It was something like that in the NFL. Like teams the week after playing the 49ers were like winless or something like that. And I think that when you play a team like Penn State, that's not going to be easy because they're going to run the football. They're going to try and dominate you up front. They're going to play hard-nosed defense. And so playing them before us, they could overlook the Maryland game. They might sit some people up. They may have to rest some people because the Penn State game is not going to be an easy game. That's going to be a struggle for a USC team. So I think there's 4 big reasons why I think that we can win that game. It's at home. Their defense has never been good, it feels like, over the last couple of years. We get them after Penn State. Penn State could potentially beat them up. And they have a new starting quarterback who I don't think is anything crazy. So I think we will upset USC at home, and it'll be a big upset under the Mike Locksley era. Maryland's Ruben Hippolyte is the most underrated linebacker in the Big Ten. I will talk about that in the rest of the linebacking room after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, I honestly think that Ruben Hippolyte is the most underrated Big Ten linebacker. I don't think Ruben Hippolyte is going to get a ton of respect going into this season. I think that he's getting some respect, but I don't think people realize how good this guy is and how good he is going to be going into next year. I believe Ruben Hippolyte is explosive. He's a good enough athlete to make it to the NFL and have a chance to get drafted next year. Like this is a money year for Ruben Hippolyte, and he's been playing at Maryland now for since the 2020 season, and so he's been a big part of what we do, and I think he's going to be a big part of the linebacking core. Obviously, he's our best player in that room, and I think that he has to lead us for the Terps to be successful in that middle of the defense. It's always important to have someone in the middle of your defense in the linebacker room, the guy that's going to signal stuff out, make sure everyone's in the right spot. And I think that's what Ruben Hippolyte is. I think he's the leader. I think he's one of our best players on our team. And the amount of experience that he has is going to really allow him to flourish in the Maryland offense. But the reason I'm talking about him today is because he was on the Butkus Award watch list with a bunch of other really good players. So he's on the Butkus Award watch list, and there's like 50 guys on that list. So I think that he has a chance to – I'm not going to say he's going to have a chance to win that award, but he definitely has a chance to be in that conversation, I think, at the end of the year. And that might surprise a lot of people. But I think that Maryland linebackers haven't been playing every single snap, haven't been playing every single down. We love to rotate different guys in and out. And I'm not sure that it's going to be different this year, but I think that he's a guy that you can keep in the entire game. Like, I don't really want him to come out. I don't really want him to not play on a series or whatever, because that's what it's been like in the past. And I've been saying it the last couple of years. I've been like, Jayvon Barham, who's now at Michigan and who's also on this Butkus Award watch list, I think that he should have been playing every single snap. I thought that he was too good of a player to not play every single snap. And I think of the same exact thing with Ruben Hippolyte. And I think that's one of the reasons that they come in. A lot of these Maryland guys come in underrated in terms of award, all Big Ten honors, is because Maryland's a program that likes to play a lot of different guys. They like to get a lot of people in. And sometimes that's a good idea. It prevents people from transferring. It prevents people from going to other spots. But other times, I just think that you got to play your best players if you want to win games, and certain guys shouldn't be on the field in certain spots. There's a spot to play different guys. Like early on in the season when we play a UConn, play all the different guys that you want to play. When we play Villanova, play all the different guys that you want to play. But when we're at week 2 against Michigan State, our guys that are starters should be in. Obviously, certain position groups you're going to want to rotate, like the defensive line, running backs, you're going to rotate. But other than that, like we shouldn't be playing a whole lot of different guys. And I think that's why Ruben Hippolyte has become a little bit underrated, is because last year he was a second-team All-Big Ten guy, or third-team All-Big Ten selection, excuse me. He's preseason second-team All-Big Ten, according to some websites. But he had 47 solo tackles, go along with 2.5 tackles for loss and a sack and a pass breakup. And those numbers are actually smaller than what they could have been, just because he's not playing every snap. He's not playing every single down. And he's too explosive of an athlete, too explosive of a player this year not to play every single down. So I really do believe that he is underrated in terms of a national presence. And I think depending on how he puts together this year, he could potentially have a year where he gets drafted next year, just depending on how things go. But behind him, it's also interesting. I think Caleb Wheatland has to step up. He's going to be starting now with Gote and Barham gone. Caleb Wheatland is going to be a guy to start. And then really look out for Michael Harris, the sophomore, to make a jump into a real guy that could potentially push Caleb Wheatland for snaps. But I expect Michael Harris. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. I expect him to play a good amount this year as a sophomore. And so I think he has a real shot at playing this year and having a big impact on the Maryland team overall. The Terps 2025 class is really special, but can they land another really talented recruit? I will talk about that after this. So the Terps 2025 class is obviously a really special class, and a class that has a chance to finish, I think, top 20 now. Now that the fact we're the 23rd ranked class in the country, I think you look at it and you say, how far up can this class go? And I'm not sure how many other guys that we have a real shot at landing, but there's one guy that I feel that we have a really good chance at landing, and he's a 4-star on Rivals, and Jayvon McFadden. And Jayvon McFadden's another offensive lineman, and I've been talking about it. He's an offensive guard. I think he'd be a perfect player to add to this class. If you can get another 2025 recruit that is a top offensive lineman, I think your offensive line of the future is so bright, and you have a chance to be at such a high level. And we've been talking about that. That's the difference in the Big Ten between the Michigans of the world, between the Penn States, the Ohio States, between a team like Maryland. A lot of it comes down to up front and how people are up front and how well they're going to play up front. That's going to be the difference. How well you can really pass protect. How well can you run the ball? It's going to depend on the offensive line. And if we can bring in another interior offensive line like Jayvon McFadden, who's rated as a top 250 player on Rivals, a top 6 player in the state of Maryland. And so if you can bring in another guy like that, I think that it's a really good piece to this 2025 class. If you could land another 4-star, he might be the last realistic 4-star that we actually potentially could land. But he's also considering some other schools like Ohio State, I think was the favorite for a while, but I don't know. This Ohio State thing seems to be weird. It feels like every recruit that we're trying to go after, Ohio State is in the mix. And that was the same thing with Messiah Delhomme, but Ohio State didn't pull the plug, I guess, on Messiah Delhomme, so he didn't decide to commit to Ohio State. But the Ohio State thing is interesting. I think that he could go there and probably take a while to get on the field, and it's going to be a battle. But I think Maryland, he could get on the field pretty early on at the guard spot. Colorado's another school he's considering, which is interesting with Dion. which is interesting with Dion and all that they have going on at Colorado. And Florida is another school he's considering. And of course, South Carolina, a team that it feels like we're always competing against. So it really comes down to a couple of schools for me. I don't think that all these schools are actually in the mix. I think it's really between Maryland, Ohio State, and one other school maybe, but I do think Maryland has a pretty solid chance at landing him. I don't know when this kid's going to make his decision. He's not crystal balled anywhere, so a lot of people are trying to figure it out, it sounds like, but he's a big kid at 6'5", 300 pounds, so I think that he has a chance to catapult us into maybe a top 20 class for the Maryland football 2025 class that has a chance to be special. And I think when you look at it and you look at the potential of having Jalen Gilchrist and the guy like Jonathan McFadden on the offensive line in your 2025 class, and then you look at all the guys that they recruited in the 2024 class like Terez Davis and Ryan Howerton and all those different guys, then that class has a chance to be really, those two classes combined, up front, you could be set for a while up front in terms of your offensive line depth. And that's exactly what you want to do. And I think that will allow us to really have a really solid unit up front in the coming years. It's not going to be a right away thing, but in the coming years, that has a chance to be a really good unit up front that the Terps really could use up there. That could make the difference between a 9-win season and 10-win season, a 6-win season, a 7-win season. And then the biggest thing is it's going to protect 4-star Malik Washington, who is really the franchise. He's really the future. He's the guy that we're going to really trust to get this program to the next step, to the next level. We've seen it climb gradually, and we want to get it to the next level. And I think that Malik Washington, 4-star, has the opportunity to do that. And I think the protection around him is going to be a really big cause of that and is going to allow him to take the next step. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.